What is happening? What is news? What is occurring? What a busy, busy afternoon. I've had the amazing Jill Ed here. She has been helping me pack goodie bags for the retreat next weekend. And their niece, her niece, Liesel, who is also a quilter, she has also been here packing things in bags, making it really pretty and lovely. It was wonderful. And other than that, not a lot to report. I am busy threading my sewing machine. I'm actually not sure what colour to use. Oh, I know. I'll use my Oriful cream. I'm busy threading with a blue. I got confused as to which colour I was supposed to be using. So it's Oriful blue today, Oriful cream today. And I've got a cream bobbin as well, because the colourway for this quilt is quite special. Plug that in there, plug this in there. Now, when you're using that much cotton on the top thread, make sure you're always checking your top thread as well. We're very good at checking our bobbin thread hasn't run out. Also check your top thread when you know you're running a bit low, only because it does run out occasionally. As you all know, I got my gorgeous Oriful box this week, which was lovely. I felt really proud. So I was able to do my Oriful box. And I sold 50% of the stock this week. I was so shocked. Was not expecting to sell that much. It was lovely. And I'm just threading my machine while we wait for a few more people to join us. So sorry if we're boring you. Right, we have got Bertha threaded. Come on, Bertha. There we go. Threads are all to the bottom and to the back. Yay. So, what are we making? I hear you all ask. Today, we're going to do that. Now, I've made this in two sizes. The size that I'm going to do today is the small size. I can't remember what size it was. I'm very efficient on that way, can you tell? But the quilt we're going to make, this is the larger size. Sorry, I'm making it all bouncy. This is the larger size, and you can tell it is such a fun colorway. So our background color, I should have actually brought that with me so I can talk you through it. Is that going to stay stationary? Gosh, I'm so efficient at this, aren't I? So clever. I'm coming. So what we've got over here, this is going to be my background fabric, which will be where the white is there. It's a light cream. And then this purple is going to be my border over here. But now I have to decide if I'm going to put this as the color in the middle here, which I think would look amazing, or whether I do that as my points over here. And I think I'm going to do that one. I'm going to stick with the pattern and do it that way. So this is our color, but just look how beautiful this fabric is. These are amazing. This is the K Facet Collective. So that's going to be my color in the middle over there. And then this blue color over here, this bright blue, is going to be that gorgeous pink. So we're going to have the pink batik there and the purple batik there. And then this gray color over here, we're going to have the cream bumbleberries, which I think is going to be really, really pretty. So that's the way we're going to do it. I'm going to bring this along because when I made this quilt the first time, which I won't deny was quite some time ago, I actually wrote on the back what the colours were and how big they needed to be cut out. Always trying to be helpful for myself. So I'm going to keep doing that and keep them going. And that way then I know roughly what I'm cutting and what size. So now we're just going to put you in the camera frame. Bear with, caller. Right, you are now officially there. Plopping my camera in the side. And we are there. Right, so anybody who's just joining us, we are going to be making the small version of this quilt. And this is what we're going to do on Natasha Makes next month. Next week on the 29th of November. You're going to see a lot of it on social media over the next couple of days. So yeah, what I've got now is I have a cutting board area here. I have my pieces of paper. I'm going to grab a pair of scissors. And then over here, you'll see I've got my iron. And the reason I do that is because I like things to be phenomenally simple. And by doing that, I've got everything cut here, sew, press, cut, sew, press. And I'm just swiveling. You know, you're kind of doing a little bit of aerobics that way. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to now transpose. I'm going to choose my colors. So on here, my yellow, I know my yellow is going to be my bumbleberry. So the yellow over there, I'm going to be making my cream bumbleberry. The red over here, I know is going to be my pink batik. I know that my very dark green for the borders on the outside is going to be my purple batik. And I know my background fabric over here is going to be my cream. And then I know that my bright green over here is going to be the kaif. So my bright green is my kaif. And the reason we do that, and I write it down there and hopefully that's not completely backwards, is that when I'm referring to my pattern, when I go into my pattern here and I refer to the colours, I make sure that I write the colours down correctly. So where it says yellow, I'm going to go in and write bumbleberry next to all the yellows. You don't have to. It's just, I think that works easier. Sorry, I've got earache at the moment, so I'm trying very hard not to rub it because it's very sore. Pale green. Why have I called it pale green? So what I've called pale green is going to be my kaif. So pale green will be kaif. Yellow will be bumbleberry. My red will be pink. And my white will be cream. Now, last week, I have a lovely, lovely client called... Oh, just throw my pen on the floor. Called Margaret Smith, and I adore Margaret. She is so, so lovely. But she messaged me to say, you confused me so much because you kept talking about that was yellow and purple and green and yellow and orange and you were holding a grey piece of fabric, but it was yellow. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're quite right. So what it is, that the reason is because I can't write the pattern in every colour. So when you look at that picture, you'll see that that's the colour that I've used. So when I try and then transpose them across, if I'm holding that up and calling it red, you're going to be looking at me and going, it's not red, it's pink. But the pattern has called it red. So that's why there's a little bit of discrepancy on those. So please bear with me. So when you make this block, let me show you what you've got. You've got the pattern. There are 5 pieces to make up this pattern. And you've got to make 4 blocks to make up the quilt top. So you've got 20 pieces all in. What I have done is I have put I'll try to put these together. So I've got all my Ds together. I've got 4 Ds. I've got 4. Oh, I think I did have one. I just try and make sure that I've got them all together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've done 5 of each because sometimes I make a mistake. Now I'm looking for my Cs. Right, there's 1 of my Cs, 2 of my Cs, 3 of my Cs, 4 of my Cs. They're my Cs. And then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 of my Bs. And I've got my As. Now it's important that we make sure we get these in the right order because they go together. So I try and do these in the right order. So first of all, I've got number A. So my number A, I know that A1 in my pattern is red. So A1 in this one is going to be pink. So this is going to be my red. So A1 is going to be pink. Bum, bum, bum. And then A2, I know, is going to be my bumbleberry because that's my background color. Now remember, I'm doing the miniature version of this. There is a mini and a maxi version. So when you buy the pattern from Natasha in a few days, well, it's 8 days time, it'll be available. You can then go and you can decide whether you want the big version or the little version or both. Both will be available. So you can then go and decide how you want to do that. Number 4 is my bumbleberry, and then that is cream. So beef and cream. Cafe, bumbleberry, and cream. Now, I'm just going to number 4 of these. I do usually do 5 because if you make an error, it's just easier to make another one rather than unpick it. Unpicking on any form of foundation paper piecing is a complete pain because absolutely everything is on the bias. And when everything's on the bias, you then end up stretching it even more. So just be aware, I would rather make another one than stitch it twice because I just think that's a lot easier. So our B1 is going to be our cream, which is our background color. B2 is going to be the bumbleberry. B3 is the first time we're using what we call dark green in the pattern. Just need to double check I'm in the right space. Yes, dark green. And that's going to be my purple. And then my B4 is going to be my pink. Now, if you get this wrong, it's not too much of a train smash. You've just got to go and accept that if you've made an error, that is fine. Just do what you can. Just writing these all out, purple and pink. This is the labor-intensive bit where you just write everything out and make sure you've got it all done. When it's done, it's done. Bumbleberry and then purple and pink. So that's my number B, ready to go. Next, we've got number C. So number C1 is my cream background. And then I've got my bumbleberry. And then C3 is my dark green, which is my purple. I know, it's confusing, sorry. And then C4 is red, which I'm using as pink. So pink, purple, bumbleberry, and cream. Now, the only reason I do this from the starting process is I think a lot of people struggle when doing the patterns because all of these wonderful tutorials you go through and they're so beautifully presented and well made and done, but you're going through from beginning to end, and I'm just doing it bit by bit so that if it's taking you longer, that's okay. And if it doesn't, and you're super quick and fast, well done. So there we go. That's my 4 number C's. Now we're almost there. We've just got D and E left now. Number D. Where have I got D? So my number D, number 1 is red. Number 1 is my cream background. And then D2 is my bumbleberry. And D3 is my pink. So D3 is pink, bumbleberry, and cream. So I've got 4 of those as well. Pink, bumbleberry, cream. Right, we've got 4 of those. We've only got E left to do now. We're almost there. Now my E3 is a nice long piece here, which is going to be my dark green. And dark green in my pattern is going to be my purple in real life. My red is my pink. And then I've got a bit more cafe in there. There's not a huge amount of cafe here. 1, 2, 3 pieces of cafe. So I've got 1. Ah, you see, this is why we go back and check, because on number B4 is not pink, it's Cave. That's why we check. Oh. B4 is my Cave. And then on my E's, on my number E's, my number E1 is Cave. And my E2 is red, so that'll be my pink. And my E3 is dark green, which is purple. That's going to be a gorgeous piece, that piece. I've lost 2 of my number E's. Where have I put my number E's? There we go. So purple, Cave, and pink. Cave, pink, and purple. Right, so we've now written all the colours on our pieces of background piece. They are all ready to go. Now all that's left is to cut the fabric pieces. So the fabric pieces here, there is no right or wrong for this. It is how you feel comfortable. I've just realised I've left my rotary cutter over there. I shall be back in a minute. Right. So I'm going to cut a long quarter of my pink off. Maybe a little bit less than a long quarter, probably a long 1/8. Because I think that will give me enough of all the fabric that I need to do. But you can see we've chosen this gorgeous pink batik, which I think is going to be beautiful. Now the purple, we're going to use a little bit more than the long 1/8 here, because we've got the borders to cut out of this. So I'm going to cut myself a long quarter of the purple, because we've got the borders in here as well. But this is where you can then, as you do your foundation paper piecing journey, you can decide, are you going to do a bit more or a bit less? And there is no right or wrong, just do what works best for you. Hello, Christine. Hello, Amanda. Never tried FPP, would like to give it a go. Well, Amanda, now's your chance. The pattern, unfortunately, is not available until Monday the 29th. I might get Natasha to try and open the pattern a few days before. It's resting on me delivering the pattern on time. So if the pattern hasn't been released, it's me not having done it, not Natasha. So that will come available here. Because of the background, you're always going to use a little bit more background on this. I'm going to do a long quarter as well, just on the background. And anybody who's done this before knows you're not going to waste any single piece of this fabric, because whatever you don't use in this project, you will use in another. Because that is how FPP works. You become so addicted to it, you will use it again and again and again. And I've got the bumbleberry. Now the bumbleberry, we're not using a huge amount, so that one I'm going to do a long 1/8, because you're not using a huge amount. And a long 1/8 is 5 inches with the fabric. And a long quarter is about 10.5 inches with the fabric. Sorry, 9.5. And then last but not least, we've got the Cafe. Now the Cafe again, now this is like gold dust because it is so beautiful. Look at that. I mean, oh. Now my only concern with the Cafe on this project, doing the smaller version, is I am a little worried, because this has got such an amazing scale, I'm a little worried on the tinier pieces, we may not get that wonderful pop of colour. We certainly will get it on the big piece. It's just whether we're going to get it on the smaller piece. So I'm going to start with my E block. Now I'm going to make all 4 at once. Well, for the whole project, I'm going to make all 4 at once. Now, this has been folded. I always try, where possible, to make sure I press my fabric before I start, only because there is nothing more annoying than piecing a piece together and it's got a wonderful fold in it when you're trying to stitch it and you've just spent all afternoon doing everything. Me, dramatic, exaggerate, never! But just trying to make sure that everything is as flat as possible will just make your life that little bit easier when you're coming in to do it. Right, so this is our purple, and we've got our pink, and we've got our cafe to press as well. And what I've done is even this fold line in the middle, I've tried to press that out, because law of averages, that will be in your middle section, and you won't need it, so get rid. Right, that's our pink nice and pressed, and then we've got our cafe. And the fabric here, it's caladiums. Caladiums. So if anybody wants to get the cafe fabric to do this, it's called caladiums. You look on Natasha's website, she's got that already, natashamakes.com. Right, so we're going to start off with our E-block. Now, many people have always asked, how do you pick how big it is? So what I say to you is double what you think it is. And you think I'm joking, but double what you think it is, because what you got left over, you'll use in another piece. And the smaller you cut the fabric, the more chance there is of there being a mistake. You're having to unpick. And when you're doing it, you need to make sure that so on my patterns, this line over here, this dark line here is the stitch line. So when I join this to another block or another piece, this is the line I'm going to be stitching on. So this line on the outside is my seam allowance. So between there and there is 1/4 inch, between that line there and that line there. So when you're folding, you need to make sure that your fold goes down here, but also when you're doing it in an angle, that when you fold it out, that the fabric is coming past the seam allowance all the way around. Now, it is fabric origami, and there are times you're going to get it perfectly right, and there are times you're going to get it perfectly wrong, and that's okay. That is why we buy more fabric than we need, because by doing that, you are protecting the risk of making an error and not having enough. Now, what I'm looking at now, what I'm doing is I take my ruler and I measure roughly how wide that is. And you can see from there to there is about 5 inches. And from there to there is about 4 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 4 by 5 inch pieces. I'm going to have loads left over. And the reason I do that is because I then know that I've got more than enough to make all 4 pieces of these. Okay, so there are my pieces for the cafe fabric. Then I've got my pink fabric, which is my E2. This is the fabric over here. So by measuring that, I can see that at 2.5 inches wide this way and 3 inches this way. So if I do a 2.5 by 3 inch piece of pink, that will give me more than enough to be able to stitch that together. Again, cutting bigger is going to make your life a lot easier. We all make mistakes on these things, so just do what you feel comfortable with. Okay, and then when it comes to the purple, again, I've cut my selvages off, so the selvages always come off first. And then when I come to the purple, so the purple is this big stretch over here. So the purple, I'm going to need something around, now this is a lot bigger than I need it to be. I'm going to cut it 7.5 inches by 4. More than enough there. You don't need to cut it that wide. I'm just cutting it that wide in case I make a mistake. So all I'm doing now is I'm folding my little piece of fabric in half. I'm going to cut my selvage edges off first. Get my selvage edges of the batik fabric off. The joy of batik is there is no right or wrong in direction of fabric. But you do need to just make sure and be aware of getting it the right way around. So I said I was cutting 4 by 7.5. So I'm not going to cut 2 pieces of fabric. I'm just cutting 1. So 7.5 will take me to about there. And you can tell it's a really rough science. There is no right or wrong on it. Just checking that's going to work. Yeah, if I do that there, that'll work. Now, these are a lot bigger than they need to be. I know they are. It just that way, then I'm 100% sure it'll fit, and I've got enough left over. These batiks are really pretty as well. They're called salt. They're called salt dyed. They're just really pretty. So what I've done now is I have cut out my kaif, I've cut out my pink, and I've cut out my purple. And that is going to go onto my block E. I love it. Kirsty's saying, more loveliness for Natasha. Ali, good evening, John, at FPP Masterclass. Fabulous, thank you. Oh, you are so kind, Ali, thank you. So what I've got now is I've got my block laid out, ready to go. I know my A1 is my kaif. Now, with the kaif fabric, now with foundation paper piecing, this is the back, but everything is looked at from the back. This is going to be the piece of... So what you're going to do here is you're going to have your wrong side of your fabric to the wrong side of your paper, okay? So this will be out, and this is where you're going to line everything up. I know. Backhand compliment. It's weird. It's really, really weird. So what I'm going to do over here is I know that my A1 and my E1 and E2 line for sewing is going to be along here. So where I've folded it there, this is E1 and my E2 is over here. Luckily, the pink is batik, so it doesn't matter. But whatever it is, you put right side of the pink to right side of the kaif. You line that up there. You've got a fold line there where you're going to be stitching. So you put the pink on there and check you've got a 1/4 inch seam. And then you fold that down and you can see this pink here is way above the outside of that. So I know that by stitching that in place there, that will have enough fabric. Now, before you start stitching, drop your stitch length down to about 1.8. It just makes your life that little bit easier when you come to tear the papers apart. And I like doing these in less steps, so I'm going to be stitching this as chain piecing. Most people don't because, and the reason you don't want to do it is because if you make an error, you're going to make an error 4 times. Ask me how, I know. So I'm going to put that there, fold that over, check I've got enough on both sides. My pink is going to go there, and I'm happy with that. Do not chain piece if you don't know what you're doing. Do it one at a time. Life is a lot easier when you take a little bit more time to make sure that it's right. So I'm folding on my E1, E2 line so I can see where the fabric needs to go. And just to make good measure, I'm also folding on my E2, E3 line just to check I've got the fabric in the right position. And I'm happy with that. Am I? Hang on. I am happy with that. And then I'm putting my pink along there and lining that up to put through. So if I do that, you should be able to see it a bit better. Don't forget, if you have not pressed your, dropped your stitch length, drop your stitch length now. Thread-wise, I've made sure I'm using the Oriful Cream. You can do different colors as you go along. It is really, really lovely, making sure you've got the right fabric, the right thread in the right place. I think it's very special being able to have that work. Some people don't like it. You must do what works best for you. Right, now my machine, you'll see I've got a thread cutter. My only problem with the thread cutter I'm finding when I do FPP is that sometimes when I come to do the first few stitches, it doesn't recommend, it doesn't pick up that first couple of stitches, so it's a little bit off. So my top tip is there's always a thread at the bottom, which is your bobbin thread. I always try and pull that forward this way because these are your raw edges. This is what you're cutting away. So always have your raw edges to the top, all the fabric you're going to keep, and your paper, you're going to push that down. And what you do then is you put that on the table, pull all your threads to the side because you know you're going to be trimming that off. You line your 1/4 inch up there and you trim that off. Now, I think we can agree that is a piece that we're happy to throw away. This bit I won't throw away because that is likely going to come in handy. So I put that to one side for later, and then we're going to press those in a few moments. Fold everything you want down, raw edges to the top. Make sure you pull your threads to the same size as the raw edges. Put your 1/4 inch seam line on there, and you trim that past. Again, those little pieces we're not going to use. And then you just fold that back and get that ready to press. Exactly the same here. Raw edges to the top. Everything you want to keep goes to the bottom. And pull your threads forward if you can. You can see that one's quite wildly, so you may not get it in, and that's okay. It just saves you trimming those threads at the end. This little piece I think will be able to be used later. This little bit I think we can agree we can't. So again, leave that over there to press. And then last but not least, pull all your threads to one side. Everything you're keeping is going under your ruler. And again, I'll keep that because I'm going to use it. And now we'll start to see our block take shape. Now this is a really good example here. As I'm pressing this back, you can see I've got paper on the end there. Now, immediately, everybody's going to have a bit of a panic. So what you do is you turn it over, and you can see that the paper is way past the seam allowance, because this is your seam allowance line here. That's what you want. If that had ended there, obviously you've got a problem, and you need to unpick because you don't have enough fabric for your seam allowance. So you're always making sure that your seams are all covered by the edges there. But you can see it's starting to take a really pretty shape. And because this K fabric is so varied color-wise, it's going to be a very interesting block in how it comes out. And each time you make this block, because remember we're making 4 of these, each time you make the block, it'll come out totally different because of the placement of the fabric. So it's a nice little random feature in this project to be able to do it this way. So you can see, I've been mean with my fabric in the past. Maybe that's why my FPP fails. Ali, I can safely say the only reason you will ever have a problem with FPP, there are 3 reasons. 1, your fabric piece is too small. 2, your fabric piece is the wrong way round. And 3, you folded it the wrong way. Those are the only reasons you should have an issue. But you can see they were so different with all the different fabrics and the way that it lies, which I love. I think that's wonderful. Now we're going to do number E3. We're going to put E3 on. Now this is a really odd angle. So when you've got your little piece of fabric here, now this piece is enormously big for what we're doing. What you need to remember is, so this is your seam line here. You've got to put your piece of fabric on there and make sure you've got a seam line. But when you fold the fabric over, oh my goodness, I did that perfectly. So when you fold this piece, now look at that angle. Doesn't that look so bizarre? You've got the purple going this way and you've got your fabric going this way, your paper going this way. So this is your seam line here. We folded on that line between 1 and 3. And you can see now, I've got more than enough purple to cover everything around. I will just slide this a little bit this way because you've got a seam over here you've got to match up, and you've got a seam over there. But that is perfect. So if I fold that forward, you can see I've got more than enough purple fabric to get around. If anything, I might pull this a little bit this way to check I'm not wasting any more fabric and I can have a bigger leftover piece here. Because if you do this right, and this comes with practice, now I'm 100% happy with that. I'm going to stitch this down. And for once, I'm not going to chain piece it because I want to show you what I do in situations like this. So over here, I now go and I get rid of, these are my raw edges. Everything I want, I folded the paper back. So what I do is I then put my seam, my 1/4 inch seam on the line there, on the fold, and then everything a 1/4 inch that side, I'm going to get rid of. So these two pieces I'm still going to keep because I think they'll be usable. This one I think we'll agree isn't. So what I do now is I'm going to press this, set my seam, and then I fold that back. Right? So now, when I now trim away, so when you're trimming away, remember what I said, this dark line over here with the colors, that's the stitch line when you sew that onto something else. This is your seam line over here. Now, I never ever cut on the seam line. I always go a hair past the seam line, but I'm consistent all the way through my quilting. It's really important that you're consistent because if I did that on the seam line for this one and then went that way and I was 1/8 of an inch past on the other one, on the next one that comes along, if I'm not consistent all the way through, when you try to put these pieces together, they're not going to work. Because what will happen is that slight difference you've got in that seam will mean you will be out when you come to sew it. So you will find that on most of my FPP, you will have all of that being the same distance all the way along. Now, what I was trying to say to you here is when I trim this apart, there we go, making sure that's consistent. So when I cut this apart, look at this massive leftover piece. And when I put that leftover piece in there, it doesn't quite fit, but that is definitely a piece we can use in another project. There's no question. That will definitely be used in another project. This little pink I keep as well. On the edges, you'll find that the FPP, now bear in mind, I do this all the time. Do not freehand cut if you're not experienced on it. Use your ruler. And then on the bottom, you trim that off as well. Also on the seam line, being consistent all the way through. That little piece I'll keep. This little bit I'll get rid of. And again, I just trim all the way around this block, getting rid of the little extra bits of fabric that you don't need. Right, and there, oops, and there's my first piece. So I'm going to carry on making 3 more of those so that the quilt is almost ready to go when we've got all 4 pieces put together. So exactly the same as before, I'm folding on the stitch line between E1 and E3. I'm going to take my piece of fabric, line that up, fold on that line, move the fabric a little bit over so that I get the biggest piece of leftover over there as I can. Now these last 3, I am going to chain piece, only because I feel comfortable with where we are on how we're doing it. Now you'll see I've got enormous pieces here, and I don't need them to be this big, but I've cut them this big because I know I will have lots of leftover pieces. So you can see over here, I've got a huge leftover piece. So I've lined the fabric up with the edge here. So this leftover piece, I will be able to use for lots of other little pieces within this pattern. Okay, and I've got one more piece to go. Fold on that line again. Take my piece of fabric, I put that there, fold this back. I can see my angle slightly out. Rotate that back, put it like that, and you can see I've got a little bit of left over there. So I just pull this a little bit that way, and you can see I've definitely got more than enough now over here to cover my seam. And that means when I trim this down, I've got more than enough left over to use that for another piece within the same project. Alrighty, so that is now all 4 of my E blocks ready to go. I'm going to do exactly the same as I did between E1 and E2. I fold everything that I'm keeping. That will go underneath my ruler, and the 2 raw edges that I'm getting rid of, I just trim those down there. And this piece I'll keep, and these little tiny pieces over there I won't. Okay, that's now ready for pressing. I'll pop it on my pressing mat, ready to go. Exactly the same thing here. Press all your papers and everything to go underneath your ruler. Only things left over on this side are your 2 raw edge pieces. And you cut that there, right? This one I'm going to keep because it's got such an interesting colorway, and this piece as well. I do think that last little cave piece might be a little bit small to use in this project, but because it's got such an interesting colorway on there, I will still use it, and just in case, maybe not this project, but for another project, we'll be able to do it. Those are a little bit small for me, so I will let those go. Right, now I'm going to go and set my seam over here. I fold that back and make sure I've got that all perfect there. And I'm fingers crossed I did it. Oh, that was close. Oh my goodness, that was very close. Can you see? I don't know if you'll be able to see it through there. That was exactly on the line. That was very unexpected, and I was playing a little bit of fabric chicken there. Don't play fabric chicken. Cut your piece bigger. Do as I say, not as I do. Right. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to trim off the excess being everything past my stitch line over here. So again, I'm trying to keep that same consistency I had on my first piece. All the way along, you'll find that I'm instinctually pulling out pieces that I know I'll use later and discarding pieces that I've accepted that those have done their job. Thank you very much. This piece I'll keep. Now you see this piece is such a tiny little piece, but I am going to hang on to it because I think it's a potential. Might be able to use it for something. We'll see how we go. Now this piece is huge. That's a lovely good piece to leave over. This is a little bit small, but I'll hang on to it just in case. The problem with this game is that as you start doing FPP more and more, you end up with more and more little pieces to make little projects. And it's fabulous, but a little bit overwhelming, making sure that you've got all the right pieces in all the right places. It does become a little overwhelming. Right, so that is my number 2 piece. But you can see how similar they look with those middle pieces there. They look very similar with the brown central sections. But then when we come to do these pieces, these are much more pink. So we'll see now where we go on those. Sorry, when I go quiet and I'm using a rotary cutter, I'm just trying to make sure I'm being safe. Okay, so that's our 3rd piece. But look how different the color is in the K fabric there compared to these ones, which I love. I love the way this fabric changes as you go along. I think it's brilliant. So this one, we are now cutting again, trimming down the 3rd piece here. See, this piece is a little bit small, but I'm still keeping it. Mainly because it's Kaif and it's just so beautiful, and might as well hang on to it. You see, you've got this enormous piece of purple left over as one of your pieces there. So you can see this is what you're not losing, but these are your offcuts pieces here. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I am fastidious about making sure your blade is locked at all times. This will be the only time you ever see me not having my blade locked whilst I'm working on trimming down the edges of these pieces here. There we go. So that's all 4 pieces of E done, ready to go. So we've done number E. Now we're going to do... let's start with number A. Let's do A. Now, we've got lots of little pieces left over here. So what I start to do at this point is I separate these out by colour. The reason being is you're going to then test how you go with your colours. So over here, you'll see I'll have a cave pile, I'll have a pink pile, and I'll have a purple pile. And you'll find it a lot easier if you want to do this, start at the beginning, because then as you start saving pieces, if you do it at the beginning, it just makes your life that little bit easier that they're all ready to go. And then when I'm finished the project, or I pack the project up because I haven't finished and I haven't got time, I've got to crack on with something else, what I'll do is I'll put each one of these colours into a Ziploc bag. And by putting it into a Ziploc bag, it just makes my life that little bit easier. Now on this one, we're using all 5 colours. So I'm actually going to now take my cream. Remember we cut this cream earlier. The cream, we are going to cut off the salvage first. And I'm going to press this to get it done. There we go, that's my salvage. And I know I need to get roughly a 3-inch square. So I'm going to cut, let me just cut a random 3-inch strip over there. Oh, it helps if you press it first. Sorry. So I'm just cutting roughly 3-inch pieces over here. So that'll be my cream. And then I've got my bumbleberry. Now my bumbleberry, I think I'm going to cut roughly the same size again. So I'm going to get rid of my salvage. And then over here, so that's roughly 6 inches. So actually, I think I'm going to do it like that. And then I'm going to fold that in half. That'll be more than enough there to cover that. Right, so I've got my cream. I've got 4 pieces of cream. I've got my bumbleberry. I've got 4 pieces of bumbleberry. Then I've got my pieces of kaif. Now you see, this is a really small little piece of kaif. So at this point, if you did have bigger pieces left of your kaif, go through your kaif bundle. I don't. So I'm going to just then measure, and I'm going to say, right, 2.5 by 4. So this fabric is already 2.5, I think it's about 4 inches wide. So I'm just going to cut 2.5-inch strips, and that will be more than enough to cover my pieces there that I need to do. So that's going to be for my kaif. So I've got my cream, I've got my bumbleberry, I've got my kaif. Then I've got my pink. Now these pink pieces, they are enough to cover there, but I'm not going to yet. I'm just going to get my fabric over here. These are going to be about 1.5 inches wide by about 4 inches. My piece of fabric is already 4 inches wide. So I'm just going to cut 1.5-inch strips of these. You don't have to pre-cut your fabric. I just prefer to, because that's just what I do. I'm actually cutting it by 2 inches by 4.5. That's what I'm doing there. So that's we've got my cream, bumbleberry, kaif, pink, and now I need a bit more bumbleberry. So the bumbleberry on the end, I'm going to need about I'm going to do 3 inches by 2. So I'm going to do 3 inches by 2. This is 5 inches, so I'm going to cut them 2 inches there, and I'm going to cut this in half. Yep, that's 5, so I'm going to cut this in half. There we go. Right, so we're now ready to go again. So our number 1 colour is the pink. So just like before, I'm going to put the pink there, making sure I've got enough border on the for the sashing. Not sashing, for the seam allowance, silly me. I'm going to make sure that I fold on that stitch line there. And you've got to make sure that when you put this little bumbleberry thing on, remember, right side, right side. So you put the right sides together. And the angle has to be right. So you can see that the fabric is going that way, not this way. So my angle isn't quite right. So I need a bigger angle this way. So that and you just keep fiddling with the angle to make sure you've got enough to go on. So as you can see now, there's more than enough bumbleberry to cover the whole area. I check back. I double check that my pink is going to fit everywhere. And then I just sew down that little line over there. Now, just like before, where you saw me chain piecing them, I'm going to do exactly the same thing on all 4 of these. I've got 1 extra piece. There we go. So it's pink over there, pink over there, and I'm going to fold this to check I'm going to get it on the right angle for the bumbleberry. Right side of the bumbleberry to right side of the pink. Fold that over. We're almost there, a little bit further out. And perfect. That's 100% right. And you just stitch along that seam to join 1 to 2. This is A1 to A2. Same again, 2 more to go. Get my pink all lined up perfectly. I fold on the line between A1 and A2. I've got that little angle. Pull that back. Right side of the bumbleberry to the batik. I fold that back. And I'm almost there, but you can see there isn't quite enough fabric over there. So I need to pull this way a little bit. So if I pull that way and check I'm still on the line. When I fold that back, I've got just enough there. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to now stitch that down there. And then our last little seam on A1, A2. I've got my little A1 line there. Sorry, I picked it up and done it at a different angle now. Press on that little A1, A2 line. Put my little piece of bumbleberry there. Fold over, not quite enough. And you just manipulate it a little bit further out until you've got it in the right place. Brilliant. And because we've done that, we can now trim off our excess on the seam and then press our seams and see where we are. Whoops, just realized you weren't able to see me stitching then. Sorry about that. So this little bit of pink I will keep, the rest I'm getting rid of. And that's just gone into my little bundle on my left-hand side over there. Right, so now we just press that there. Set your seam. Ah, that was perfect. Ooh, that was close, but I made it. Right, so you can see now we've got 1 and 2 together now, A1 and A2. Next is A3, which is our K fabric. We cut that out over here. We've got that ready to go. And that is going next to the pink. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to fold on the A2, A3 line. There we go. And remember, right side together of the K to right side of that. Put that there, and then you fold this back to check that it's going to go exactly where you need and want it to go. Bearing in mind your seam allowances as you go. Brilliant, that is ready. So this K fabric is so interesting in the way that you can sew these together because it's just such a beautiful combination of colors. You can choose a different way of doing it. It's just lovely. And you can see, like over here, I could select to have that brown in, or I can rotate it around and have all the purples. So I'm going to put the purples in, I think. Yeah, I think that'll look lovely. It'll still have some of the browns in, but you've got that lovely pop of purple in there too. And then this one, we've got that rich, beautiful pink in it. So I'm definitely going to try and catch that pink in the seam here, because I think it would just add that. If I could do a pink and purple, gosh, that would be lovely. Being able to catch those two together in there, that would be lovely. But I don't think I'm going to be able to. No, we'll just stick to the purples. We'll stick to the purples on this run. Right, we've now done the next 4 seams. Only 8 more seams to go, and these 2 blocks are done. Same as before, everything you want to keep, you're going to fold away from your raw edges, and you're going to leave that at the top. Line your quarter inch on your ruler. There we go. Get rid of the bits you're not going to use, and ready for pressing. Same again, the raw edges you keep to the top. Everything below the raw edges that you want to keep goes underneath your ruler. If you can bring your threads forward, that would be great. It just saves you trimming them off after. Line your quarter inch up again and trim off. This little piece of pink I'm going to keep, but everything else I think will be able to be let go of. Same again, all your raw edges, keep to one side. Everything you're keeping goes under your ruler. You can add your threads on this side, it saves you a bit of time. And then, there we go. And that gives you this little bit left over. Now exactly, oh no, I've got one more to go. Thought I'd done them all there. Same again, pull all your threads forward. Now with FPP, it is very important you can, my little iron is now having a moment and it's letting as much steam out as possible. Turn the steam on your iron off. It is really important because you do not want to distort your fabric. So just try, if possible, to not have the steam on your iron. Annoyingly, my iron suffered a death the other day. So, oh, anyway. Oh wow, these colors are so pretty. And these are now in the miniature form. As you'll see, I'm doing the big quilt as well. That will be on the show, I can show you that. And that's our 3rd piece. Next we've got our 4th piece, which is our bumbleberry. So we're going to use the bumbleberry fabrics over here. Move that out the way. We've got between B3 and B4. We're folding this over to make sure we've got the line over here between B3 and B4. I then take my bumbleberry, fold that back. Oh, that's really good, actually. Brilliant. And we stitch that down the line. Takes a little while to get that angle just right for what you want to stitch. And that's fine, take your time. Rather take your time now than having to unpick it after. It's so funny because the quilt we did last week, we were finished by now almost. It's just FPP is a lot more fiddly. But the finished product always looks so lovely. Everything you want to keep goes underneath your ruler. Raw edges on this side of the seam allowance. Pull all your threads forward if you can. Getting ready to press to make them nice and flat. Right, so now we're going to do our little ironing section over here. Perfect. Oh, I thought I'd made an error there, but I'm not. I'm okay. And there we go. So last but not least, we're now going to put the cream section on the bottom bit there. So I know that my A4 and A5 line goes there. Oh, that is a bit close. Right, so I'll put that there. And there we go. And we are now, we've done the last 2 stitch lines for block number A. Just got to press those down. Because the reason I did number A is because number A gets stitched to number E. So we'll now be able to stitch these 2 together, and you'll get a better idea of what the quilt mini is going to look like. Right, so now all I do is I trim these down, get these trimmed down. And when I said to you before, on number E, when I did those, I've got to keep a consistent seam allowance. Because I'm going to be joining A and E together, it's really important that you try and make sure that those seam allowances truly are consistent. You'll find that when you put these together, you spent so much time making sure that your pieces are your points that you're meeting. It's quite important at this point to make sure that your points are able to continue meeting by trimming off the seam allowances in the correct, consistent way. Right, so at this point, we are now ready to sew numbers A and E together, and they're going to go together like that. So this is A and this is E. So when I put these 2 together, because my consistent seam allowance over there and my consistent seam allowance over there, when I line these up, they should be an identical match. And they are. Now, given that I've done this numerous times, I'm not pinning anything. I am going to just take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew that down the edge. And what you were looking for is that point over there and that point over there. You were trying to match it. Ta-da! That's what you're looking for. So I'm really, really pleased with that. Now, people always ask, do you press your seams open when you do this? Look how many threads there are, how many fabric pieces there are there. When I join blocks together like this, I always ask people to try and press your seams open. The only reason is because your seams aren't going to be all bulky on one end. Open, over here, it's a lot nicer, but over here, it's a heck of a lot nicer. So all I've done now is finger press that open, and then I'm just going to take it over to my iron and just hold it completely flat down, not moving it at all. Oh, I'm just holding it flat on top of there, and that's my seam done. And that is the start of the equation. I'm really pleased. So I'm going to carry on trimming these down. And hopefully you'll be able to see them all being trimmed down. And then sewing all those together. We've got 3 more sections to go. You're probably about halfway. I'm going to need a drink of water in a moment. So if you want to all go and get yourself a beverage, get yourself a nice little beverage. I will sew this lot together. Take a little beverage and be back and chatting away to you in about 5 minutes time. So this is just our little interlude. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to play music for you because the powers that be at YouTube won't let you. So yeah, I will just let you be and speak to you in a few minutes. I'm just going to carry on working as I go. But yeah, enjoy your beverage and I will be back engaged with you in about 5 minutes. I'm just going to start stitching all these down and grab a glass of water. If you're just joining, I'm joining these two sections together. I'm then going to go and take a little bit of a break to get some water. Might put a little post up on the Facebook Live just to tell everybody that we're here in case they missed it. And then I will be back with you momentarily. But it's quite a little space. It's quite a little... They really are working well, I think. Last little bit together there. That's 3 together. Not quite sure I've got quite so many threads left over on the edge here, but I'm going to trim them off as I go. And oh, that was perfect. So just like before, I'm just pressing my seams open with my fingers. And when I've got them pressed open with my fingers, literally just laying it down on the ironing board and holding the iron on it to keep those nice and flat. Oh, that was perfect. And that's what you're looking for, is just have a nice flat open seam when you get there. And look how perfect that is. That's exactly what you're looking for. That is the best you can do, the best you can hope for. If you don't get it right, please be kind to yourself. If you didn't get this one right, you'll get the next one right. And if you don't get the next one right, that's okay too. You've tried, you've given it a go, and it's a lot better by giving it a go than not. Can you imagine if you just left the fabric in the cupboard and you hadn't tried it even? That would have been dreadful. Here, you've tried, you've given it a go, and it's working. It's brilliant. Just be kinder to yourself if it doesn't meet perfectly. Like that one is ever so slightly out. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. There are people who can't. So if you can't and you're not happy with that, don't unpick the entire seam. What I would suggest is unpick maybe 2 inches either side of that seam where your stitch is not quite right. Unpick it a bit, and that way you will be able to just unpick and re-sew the area that's exactly affected rather than the whole seam. Why are you steaming? You're not meant to be steaming, my little iron friend. There you go. Perfect. And again, you can see that one is pretty impressive, and that looks great. So now we've got 4 number E to A's. We've got 4 that look like this. Obviously, each one looks different because of the different fabric that we've used for the K facet fabric. And now we've just got to do B, C, and D. So I'm going to leave that there for a few seconds. I'm going to just fire up my laptop to just quickly go onto Facebook and share this live feed. And very, very quickly, whoops, I'm going to grab a glass of water. Who else can do this? Talk for an hour and a half without any problems. Have you had any messages? What we've got here. Great tutorial. Thank you, Catherine. That's very kind. Oh, Amanda's saying, really enjoying your tutorial. Definitely give it a go. Ali is agreeing. That's very kind. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everybody. I am now simply going to do a very quick share with everybody. And grab a drink, because I'm thirsty. It won't be a gin and tonic, I promise. Right, let's go and get some water. I don't seem to have any water, so tonic water, that will do. And sealed, no gin. I did consider it though. Right, so we have now got B, C, and D. I think we're going to start off with D, only because it's the smallest. I'm going to get that out the way. Now, all these little pieces that you've cut off, I do think you can now go and have a little look and see if any of these will work. Remember your seam allowances. That D piece actually will work. That definitely will work. And when you're doing this for the first time, don't use your leftover pieces. Save that for another day. Only because I don't want you worrying and stressing about not having enough pieces. I'd rather you just cut more to make it work. That bumbleberry will work. So as you get more experienced on this, you will then become a little more adept at it. So I've done this many times. So I know that I will be able to get... So I've got my pink in there, and I've got my creams. I don't have enough cream, so I'm going to cut 2 more pieces of cream. But I know I do this a lot. So for myself, I feel confident doing it. Trust me, the only mistakes you're going to make, or when you do make a mistake, is because your fabric is not big enough. So rather cut your pieces again. It's a lot easier making bigger pieces and not having to unpick. So we are now going to, we've got 4 cream, we've got 4 bumbleberry, and we've got 4 pink. Okay, the first color I'm doing is bumbleberry. That's my number one. I'm going to fold on my D1 line. Now I've done this the wrong way around. So I'm going to have my D1 on the table. I'm then going to fold my D2 line over there. Now when you've got your D1 on, make sure that your D1 fabric goes to the very edge of your seam allowances and everything. And if necessary, just fold this line 2 or 3 times. Just take your time and get it right, okay? It will flatten out once you have sewn it. Now, I do not suggest for 1 second you do this. In fact, I'm not even going to do that with smaller pieces. I'm going to make my life a lot easier, and I'm just going to cut bigger pieces. Life is too short. Use the fabric. You've got the fabric. Use the fabric. Right. So D1, I've got down. D2, I've got to now just keep repositioning my bumbleberry fabric to be the right position. And I think that is the right position now. Right, so that's D1 and D2. And next I've got, oh, where's my extra piece? There we go. I've got D1, which is my cream. I'm doing my bumbleberry again as my D2, so I line that up, push that back, that works perfectly. So my D1 is my cream, I line that up to the edges over there. And the D2 over there. One more to go. Got my D, oh, have I? No, I don't. An extra one there, don't need that. Because I like to chain piece this project, because I find it easier doing one at a time, one whole quilt at a time, I now pull this back. Everything that I'm keeping, so D1 and D2, everything I'm keeping goes that way. Everything I'm getting rid of is on that side of the ruler. Line my 1/4 inch line up against there. And I get rid of that. So the bumbleberry I'll get rid of, and that piece I will keep. And then I press that open. Same again, everything you want to keep goes under your ruler. And last but not least, I am doing the last piece over here. Okay. I forgot what colour I'm doing next. Pink. Right, last but not least, we've got our pink selection on here again. Now the pink is a tiny little slither on here. So I know that these tiny little bits that I've got left over here are more than big enough. So I'm just triple checking that they're going to work size-wise. If not, we're going to do exactly what I did with the bumbleberry, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut bigger pieces. It just makes my life a little bit easier. So these ones I'm going to cut 3.5 inches by 1.5 inches. So at the moment, that's about 4 inches. So I'm going to cut these 1 3/4. Just means I know that I've got enough fabric to get them across. Right, let's try that again. So if I put that along that seam there and I press that up, I've got more than enough. And sometimes that tiny little bit of extra fabric that you've got just by cutting a nice rectangular piece just makes your life that little bit easier than having to get to the end and realize, rats, I haven't got enough space. I need to recut the fabric and unpick and everything. Life is hard enough without having to unpick and play around and do all of that. Now we're 60% of the way through this quilt now. I know it's been going on for 90 minutes, so an hour and a half. Foundation paper piecing does take that little bit longer, but it takes that little bit longer because it's so amazing and the outcome is so special. So thank you for hanging around and sticking with me. I'm going to do this project to the very end, so if you do need to run off, I will still be here in about another hour when we're still finishing off. We're determined to get to the bottom of it and make sure it works. All I'm doing over now is just to make sure that I get all my threads on this side where I'm cutting. Just makes your life that little bit easier getting it done. And one more to cut. So we're now at the situation where we just trim this all down. Trying to make sure that you're consistent all the way around as you were on the first two. There we go. We are now on block D. So you can see there's that lovely little fan effect there on block D. And I'm now just trimming this little last two off. And then what I'll do is those that are just joining us now. I see we've had a little influx of peoples. Hello, welcome. We are busy piecing together the quilt that I'm going to be taking on to Natasha Makes in a week's time. Not tomorrow, a week tomorrow. Very exciting little quilt. It's a Christmas wall hanging. Well, it's not Christmas really. It's a winter wall hanging, we've called it. And I just love this design. I came up with it about 3 years ago. And I think it's very pretty and very versatile because it can take all different types of fabric, all different types of ideas. You can do it in solids. You can do it in plain. And we've done 3 of the 5 sections now ready to go. Just to recap where we are, I'm just trimming this off for number D. Remember, if you haven't used your rotary cutter proficiently for a long time, do not free cut like this. Always use a ruler, protect your hands, protect yourself. So we have made piece A and piece E. So this is A, this is E. We piece those together now. And now we've made number D for Delta, which is this one over here, D for Delta. And we are making this quilt. You can't really see it there, so what I'll do is I will put it up on the quilting frame. And you can come and have a look. I love a good 3D on a quilt. And this is a really good 3D picture on it. And I've just realised what I don't have to do it that way. I can do it this way. So that's what the quilt looks like. The big one is 50 inches square. So the piece that we've put together already is, that's my A block there. That's my E block there. And now we've put this little piece together here, being the E block, the D block. So now we've just got this piece to go and that piece to go, and we can put it together. It's a really lovely little quilt. It's a really fun way of doing it and things. So, yeah. Back to the piecing. We're doing it as a mini. Sorry, I'm all bouncy. Doing it as a mini at the moment because I'm doing 3 different colorways. And you'll find that we've got a miniature version and we've got the full version. And I wanted people to be able to have the option of doing both. And I love it. I love this thing, the design. So you can see this is the quilt here. Just a really fun, light way of doing it. I think it's fun. So now we're going to do B or C, B or C. We'll do B first because B is the first one on the list. Now, all this little excess that I've got left over here, I'm just going to get rid of this because I don't need it. Just clear up a little bit of space for you as you go. So that was the quilt that we're making. I have 5 sections. And what I'm doing as I go is I'm actually chain piecing it as I go. And now I've just got B and C left to do. Now these are the biggest sections on it. What I've done already is I've just cut off some extra pieces of fabric. We're going to start off with number B. I always have a little bit of a measure, roughly, of how big the piece should be finished. So this is going to be roughly 6.5 by 4.5. 6.5 by 4.5 I'm going to need. So that's going to be 4 pieces of that. Just going to double check how wide my piece is here. So that's 5. So I'm going to take it up to 6.5 there. And that will give me my 4 pieces there. Always cut your piece bigger than you need. Always, always, always. You will find your life is a lot easier doing that. I always get a fresh rotary cutter blade at the beginning of every one of these projects. Your life is so much easier doing that. Just get it done and cut at the very beginning. It's just easier, easier, easier. For the B2 block, I'm going to cut a 3-inch square. And that will be enough there. And I just roughly cut these. There's no exact measurements. I'm just trying to make sure that you just get it into that space. There is no right or wrong. But make sure that you cut more than you need. Rather have more fabric than less. It's just easier that way. Now, you remember at the very beginning when we were doing it, I've got these massive purple pieces left over. Now, you can see I've only got a small little piece of purple that needs to go in there. And I can see easily I've got... that one might not work, actually. So I've definitely got 2 pieces of purple here, able to cut that very easily to my purple pieces. Because you can see my purple piece is this section here. And these big sections over here are going to be more than enough to cover that purple section. More than enough. So that one will do fine. That one will do fine. And, oh, goodness me. That one will do fine as well. And that one's going to be perfect. So from the scraps that I've been leaving over to the one side, I've got all my purple sections there. And then I've got the last piece of the K-facet fabric. And that one is going to be, I'm going to use 3-inch squares. 3-inch squares. And I'm just going to give it a go. So I'll do 3 inches by 3 inches. Right, so I've got lots of the cave left. When I say lots, I've got bits and pieces of the cave left over from my long 1/8. And I'm just going to play with it now and see where we go. So I've got my cave, I've got my purple, I've got my bumbleberry, and I've got my cream. So B1 and B2. B1 is my cream. So I'm going to lay my cream down here. You can... oh, I'm going to line it up with the edging over there. And then B2, let me put that down. There we go. So you can see that the fabric lines up with the edge of the paper. My B2 line is going to take me to my bumbleberry. So I'm folding a line in. And I'm looking for my bumbleberry. Now the bumbleberry, make sure you got the right way round. You put that over there. And I fold that back and just check you've got enough. And I do. And there we go. So now we're folding, checking, folding, checking. And when you're satisfied, you then just stitch down the B1, B2 line. Right side of the bumbleberry, so right side of the cream. And just move that around to check you've got enough to cover your seam allowances on both sides there, which I did on that one. And then you've got 2 more to go. Again, line that up against the fold line, the stitch line you're going to be doing. And we check that we've got enough seam allowance on this side and that side at the end of your point, which I do there. And away we go. And then I'm on my last piece over here. Again, line your cream up. Right, so now you trim off everything on the raw edge line and you keep everything that you want that's going to go underneath your ruler over here. You keep everything there. Now remember, when you're trimming this off, this huge amount of cream you'll use on another part of the project, and then you've got that ready to press and ready to go. Same over here. Everything you want to keep, you're going to fold down away from the raw edges. Again, you hang on to those pieces because they'll definitely come in handy later on. You'll find I'm always pulling my threads this way, so as I cut the fabric off, oops, pull that up a little bit more. Oh my goodness, I'm falling stuff on all over the floor. And now we just press those seams. Right, so next section we're putting on is the purple. So we've now got our purple sections from our leftover pieces over here. I'm folding between the B2 and the B3 line over here. And I pop that along there. Nice straight piece. Fold back. Check I've got enough. I certainly do. And now I press along there. And then I've got my next one, B2, B3. Fold on that line. Oh, I thought I'd use my K-facet fabric there. I'll leave that over there so I don't use the wrong one. Again, line that up there beautifully. Check you've got enough for your seam allowance, and then you just stitch all the way through. Again, check if you've got enough seam allowance over here, and you just stitch all the way along. Itchy nose! Itchy nose. Means you're going to have a fight with someone. Right, so same as before, you fold everything you want to keep down below the seam allowance. Pull even the threads you want to cut off, you pull those that way. Put your ruler down there, get your 1/4 inch seam on the stitch line, and you just cut away everything you don't need and don't want. Oh, this is starting to look so pretty. Right, I'm going to carry on doing these as I go, because I do find that by doing the same, this is why I chain piece them, because I find that if you do all the cutting at once, all the pressing at once, there is actually a shortening of the time process, because I do think you're not wasting time turning around to do the iron. You're just cutting everything all the same each time. The only problem is if you do make a mistake, you are making the mistake all 4 times. That is the only problem. But hey, live dangerously, give it a go. So now we have done the 4 pieces there. We've got 1 piece left to stitch on, which is my K facet section over here. And on this piece, I have to decide if I'm going to do purple or pink. And I think I'm going to go with the purple. Fold that back, check it's going to work. And it will. The only thing with using the K facet on a smaller fabric is obviously the scale, sorry, on a smaller wall hanging like this is on a large scale. These fabrics work really, really well. You'll see when I make this as the large version, you'll see how different this quilt looks with all the K facet fabric in. So there is a difference in that aspect, but I do think that this fabric is just so beautiful. It just highlights this design of the quilt really beautifully. And it will all be available on Natasha on Monday the 29th at 10 a.m. And then this is the last one. And then we've only got 1 more piece to sew after this. Right, so that's our B and D areas done. And the good thing is that B and D, surprise, surprise, get sewn together. So at this point as well, just like I did with my A and my E, I am going to sew my B and my D together. You don't have to, and the pattern doesn't tell you you have to. You just sew them as you wish to and as you want to. Right, now I'm going to go and press my seams again, get these open and done. And then what I'm going to do is trim these blocks so that they are right. And as I said, we did our D blocks earlier. They're going to get put onto the B blocks. And then we've got one last section to do, being number C for Charlie. And then we are done with this mini quilt. This piece I'll keep. Keeping, getting rid. And I'm trimming these edges off here just to make sure that I'm keeping that consistency. And then there we go. So that gets sewn on like that. So I'm going to put these on top of each other, lining that up perfectly. And as I trim them down, I'm going to stitch B for Bravo and D for Delta together. I have done this for many, many years. I am very comfortable sewing these without pins. You must do what works best for you. Personally, I am happy doing this. Make sure you do what works for you. Okay. Another one to trim down. Only one more section to go, and then the quilt top is finished. So thank you for bearing with me while I go through this. I love the fact there are people wanting to watch the whole process. Thank you for being here. Perfect. So I know that that's right, and I know that that's right. So I'll push these together. Make sure I've lined them up correctly. That looks good to me. Just want to check that this has in fact lined up. Ah, perfect. Perfect. You can see that little pop of pink in the middle there is really pretty. Again, with these, I always make sure that I press these seams open with my fingers first. And then once they're pressed open by hand, I just take them over to the iron. And I literally just put that down like that. Take the nose of the iron to make sure that it stays open. And then I hold my iron down on it to make sure that it stays nice and flat. Perfect. So you're looking for that to make sure that it stays open. I do find that pressing the seams open when you go through and do these at this point, it does just feel a lot better. So you do what works for you. I just find that there are much less lumps and bumps by pressing your seams open. Right, 2 more to go, and then we've just got that one last section left to sew, and we are done. These big pieces I hang on to, and oh, I just popped that on the floor, sorry. I have loads of little Ziploc bags that I put all these different fabrics in for the various FPP projects that I do. You'll find over here, I was making binding the other day, so I've got all these little triangles and all these little cave triangles left over. And I leave them to the side there, so when I'm ready, I just put them in a little bag, and then when I do go and make a little project at some point, I can just use my little scraps that I've got left over. Because every now and then you're looking for that perfect little dot or that perfect little fabric, and by doing it that way, you work it out. So that one's going onto that one there. Again, you line those two up brilliantly. Check you've got it all lined up. And you sew down the line. A random rogue piece of thread just appeared, fabric appeared there. Right, check that that's all lined up again. Same again, press those open. And we're almost hitting the 2-hour mark, so thank you very much for everybody who's been here the whole time. For those of you just joining us, thank you very much. It's lovely to have you. It's always nice when you've got to do this prep anyway. It's nice having a little bit of company on there. If you are around and you want to have a chat, pop a little comment in the messages, in the chat function, and you'll be able to then say hello. If you've got any questions, there's something that I've missed, pop it in. Brilliant. And then the last one, that goes on there. I'm going to press that down quickly because there was a little bit of movement in that pink fabric. So you can see now it's nice and flat. And we're going to get that up here. Oh, there we go. Get a little bit of my head, just for a little bit. Not everybody wants to see my head, but there we go. So again, just press this open. And we are almost there. So I'm pressing that open with my fingers. I use the nose of the iron to make sure that that's flat. Not quite sure why there's so much paper on the floor there. Oh, I know. I know why you're on the floor there. Put that. Right, so we have now done A and E and B and D, and all that's got to go in the middle is number C. So we've just got to do number C in the middle there. So I'm leaving those on the edge of the ironing board over there. And now we're going to cut number C. Beforehand, I promise there's no gin in here. I'm just having a little swig of tonic water. Oh. Go on, you try talking for 2 hours without a problem. Right. One more to go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 more seams and these are done. 6 more seams. 7, 8, 9. 9 more seams and we are finished this block. How terrifying is that? Right. So I need cream. I've got my cream over here. I'm going to use 6 inches by 4.5. So how wide have I got this? Oh, works almost well. Right, so that's my cream cut. That's my number 1. Then my bumbleberries. I need 4 pieces of bumbleberry, which I am going to see if my extra pieces have got. And they don't. You're going to need a piece that's about 3 by 2.5 inches. 3 by 3. Nope, 3 by 2.5. 3 by 2.5. So I'm going to cut that way. And then fold that in half. So all I'm doing is just trimming these down. These are just guessworks of the pieces. And yes, you're going to have lots left over, and that's okay. Annoyingly, on my blade is going dull because you're cutting through paper and everything as well. So I always say to people, make sure you have a brand new blade when you're doing this. Your wrists are much more important than a new blade. And blades are a lot cheaper than new wrists. So my piece of purple, I'm just going to cut a piece roughly this big. And I know that that's going to be enormous and I won't need as much. So that's 4.5. That's going to be more than enough there. And I'm going to do 3. There we go. So that will be more than enough for my purple. So that's my purple. So I've got cream, I've got bumbleberry, I've got purple. And then I have got pink. I'm doing my pink at the bottom. So my pink at the bottom, I'm going to need... Let's do 3 by 4. That's 4 already. So we're just going to cut these 3. And remember, you are going to have lots left over. Right. Let's start. Number 1, our first color is our cream. So the cream I'm going to line up with the... Oh. So my cream, I'm going to line up with the top there. Let me get this positioned a little better. So the cream, I'm lining up with the top of the fabric over there. And then I'm putting it over there. Now my bumbleberry is going over there. I don't need a huge piece of bumbleberry. So right side of bumbleberry to right side of the fabric. Fold that back. That's more than enough. And away we go. That little piece of cream that I'm just doing now had a bit of a fold in it. So I'm just pressing that to make sure it's nice and flat. Now, there we go. That wasn't quite wide enough, which is why I rotated the fabric there to make sure I had the length and width that I needed. Again, right side of the bumbleberry to the right side of your fabric there, which is your background fabric. Stitching down the C1, C2 line. Going to just see if we've had any messages. Good evening, Michelle Hughes. Oh, YouTube is saying this video might be inappropriate. How exciting, Barbara Epstein. I don't know. I said it wasn't for children. Maybe that's what the problem was. I don't know. But you know, everything I do is not appropriate. Nice to have you, Michelle Hughes. I hope you are well and doing okay. Again, right side of my bumbleberry to right side of your background fabric. And I'm going to just sew down the B1, B2 line very quickly. My stitch length already from the beginning of this process has been reduced down to 1.8, 1.6. Your perfect stitch size that you're looking for is you don't want your fabric tearing in half just with the stitching. You want it holding the stitch together, but as you go along, you want to make sure that you can still pull the fabric apart, the paper out, without tearing your stitches. So there is a bit of a fine balance. On my machine, I know that's around about 1.8. Your machine might be 1.5, might be 1.6, it might be 2. Just figure that out for yourself. You just need to make sure that you'll be able to tear the fabric off, the paper off the fabric when it comes that time. Right, so that is C1 and C2 all done together. I'm now just setting my seam and rolling the fabric back to get that in position. Won't be a moment. Should have moved the camera to show you where we were. Oh. Right, so we've done C1, C2. Now we're going to do C3, which is the purple. I'm going to fold this back on the C3 line. C2, C3 line. And I'm going to line my purple up. Now I know that this is much bigger than what I need it to be, so I'm going to have lots left over. I fold that back. That's perfect. Fits perfectly. And then I've got this one to go as well. Again, folding on the C2, C3 line. Turn that back. Pop my purple on there. Check, that works perfectly. And we're almost finished the entire mini quilt. Ah, check your bobbins. My bobbin almost ran out there, but it didn't. I don't know if I'm actually playing bobbin chicken, I don't know. But yes, always check your bobbins. I wonder if that's wide enough. Oh, it is. There we go. I'm going to use it that way because I think that's wide enough. So if my math is correct, we only have 7 more seams and this quilt is done. This quilt mini is done. Exactly the same as we've done on multiple occasions already. Everything that I want to keep, I'm folding to go below the ruler, under the ruler. The ruler is put on top of the fabric. Everything I don't want is going on this side of the ruler, on that 1/4 inch line, and I cut everything off. Keep the larger pieces, and that's ready to press and check that I got it right. Again, everything you want to keep goes under the ruler, and everything you don't want to keep goes onto this side past the stitch line. You will feel as you're cutting when your blade needs changing. Mine definitely needs changing right now, but I am conscious of the amount of time that you have all given me thus far, and I am just going to push that a little bit harder with my blade to make sure that I cut everything properly. If I was doing this my own, without that, I would be closing down the rotary cutter and getting a new blade. Make your life easier, replace your blades. Brilliant. So now we are pressing this to one side. We've only got one more colorway to add to this collection here. Oh, was that enough? Ah, brilliant. Right, and then the last one we're doing is the... Sorry, I just noticed I had Bumbleberry there and I thought I'd forgotten to put something in the quilt. Right, so now we're doing our pink section there. So I'm folding on my C3, C4 line over there. I'm taking my piece of pink. I'm lining that up with the stitch line. Checking I've got it in the right place. And there we go. And we now are at the point where we've finished all the individual segments. We are now going to make the blocks one piece. So this is a little bit of admin. We're now going to trim off the excess bits that we have over here. I'm going to be ambitious and say we will keep that purple. The likelihood of using it is slim, but we'll keep it and try. Right, and now we're pressing these open to one side. Sorry, not open, pressing it. And now I am trimming off the leftover bits of number C. And I did get my math wrong. I think it's now 11 seams for this to be finished, because you've got to sew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yes, 11 seams, and this quilt will be finished. Or the center, it depends if you're going to put some borders on or not. And you'll see what I'm doing here is I'm just trimming along the lines of the seam allowance, just to be able to guide your pieces together. So we've got our A and E section, we've got our C section, and then I've got my B and D section. So that is your block. So I'm going to sew this one to this one first. Because I've been consistent on cutting my seam allowances, I am then able to line these up beautifully, and you will see that lines up perfectly over there. My camera's not quite focusing there. And so it lines up perfectly there and over there. So you are ready to go. And the good thing is, other than in A and E, there aren't really any very big points that you need to match up. Now on this, it is very important that you press your seams open as you go. So I press my seam open here by hand, like I have all the way through the quilt. Just press it open by hand, but then take it over to the iron. Take it over to the iron. Use the nose of the iron to hold everything to one side. And you then are able to press that open to press that open. And then that's what it looks like when it's pressed open. And then the last but not least, we're now sewing numbers A and E to B, C, and D. I know it sounds so peculiar, doesn't it? But when you see me do it like this, it does make a lot more sense. Just when you're reading the pattern. And again, you press this open as you go. It just makes your life that little bit easier. I just run my fingers over it, press it open, and then take it to the ironing board. Use the nose of your iron to press everything open. And that is your block. Oh my God, I love it. Oh my God, I really love it. Right, now I'm going to finish off these last few pieces here. Oh my God, I can't believe how beautiful that looks. Eek. I do wonder if I switch the purple for the fins with the I might make the bigger version of this in a slightly different colorway. I'm not sure. I'll talk you through what I mean now. So what I'm thinking was these purple bits here, whether I don't use the K facet fabric in the purple bits for the longer one. I'm wondering if that wouldn't be amazing. So that goes there, that goes there, and that goes there. So I put those together, line them all up, press them open as I go. And you can see over here, by having squared everything up, that bit there, because of the edges, having that nice and square just makes lining everything else up so much easier. So do trim around your FPP pieces in your pattern. Just makes your lining up process a lot easier. Okay, so again, as I said before, press these open before you sew on the next section. Just makes your life that little bit easier. And last but not least, we're now sewing B and D through to C, D, and E. Sorry, A and E through to the other ones here. Oh, look at that. Just gorgeous. But the great thing is, hang on, I gotta press this down because I'm gonna tease you. I'm gonna tease you. So what you do next is, obviously, block 1 and block 2 go together. So you just sew down this line over here. And then half your quilt is already done. I know, it seems like ages ago that we started. What I will say is be careful where you're joining seams together, joining blocks together, that you keep your seams open, because having got this far without mixing, getting everything leaning to one side, it'll be nice if you can finish it that way. And you can see I've almost done it. There's a little bit of a ripple there, but that's okay. Ooh! Isn't that fabulous? Oh my God, I love it. And again, you press the seam open and you go over to the iron and you press it open. And the reason being, this is the perfect example. Look how many massive amounts of fabric you've got in one spot there. By pressing your seam open, if you are going to quilt this, whether it be on your machine or on a long arm, you're then able to at least halve the amount of stitches that might be skipped in that little area. It's your call, it's your quilt, it might not bother you, it would bother me, so that's why I would be doing it that way. Why is this not? Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm officially very, very pleased with that. Officially very, very pleased with that. I love it. Right, so that's half the quilt done. We've got 2 more of these to square up. 2 more of these. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more seams, and this is done. If you want to border on, obviously it'll be a few more seams, but oh, I love it. FPP is renowned for taking that little bit longer. We're at 1 hour, 147 minutes at the moment. I can't remember how many that is in hours and everything, so it has taken a little bit of time, but you can't deny the result is very special. Brilliant. So then, again, that's my C piece, that's my B and D piece, and that's my A and E piece. Exactly like we've just done. Sew these all together, lining it all up with the cut edges. Right, and then we're sewing the last little bit on there. My iron is having a bit of a moment, so I'm just unplugging her to hopefully re-plug her in, and then hopefully she will be a little happier. Because right now, not a happy iron. Oh, look at that. Perfect points. Love it. So exactly like before, press your seams open. And use the nose of your iron to get that done. Right, we've got one more piece to go, one more piece to cut up. So let's get this done. Sorry, I always go quiet when I'm using the rotary cutter, simply because I want to make sure it's safe. So now we've got the last two, check you get this the right way around. That goes there, that goes there. So that's going to be our finished section there. Putting that to there. Thought I saw a comment. Hello, Anne Davy. She's saying, sorry she's late. Don't be silly, darling. You're never late. It's lovely to have you. We are almost finished this quilt mini now. I'm doing my prep for Natasha Makes for the 29th of November because I am on a retreat next weekend with my lovely, lovely ladies. And I want to make sure that I can able to share with all of you, like I did the last time I was on Natasha, all the prep and how it goes and what I'm making and how it all works. And yeah, that's kind of my plan. All I'm doing now is holding the iron down onto my piece, not moving it, making sure that all my seams are pressed open and that that's nice and flat. And then I'm sewing this last section on. And the last seam of the blocks is done. Now I'm just pressing this open with my finger again to check that I can press this all open. Right, so just like before, we're sewing these two pieces together and we're going like that. We're sewing along this line here. And in theory, without the borders, only 2 more seams to go. Oh, that looks pretty good. Oh, I'm happy with that. Oh, I like it. That looks really good. Right, so there we go. That's the first piece. This is the second piece, and now we sew these together. Now, there are no points to match per se, but this little bit in the middle, try and catch that if you can. As I said, I am very confident in using my sewing ability just by lining up. And being able to do it by eye. If you are not, please use pins. Having said that, with all that bravado, you know that means I'm going to miss that point in the middle. But every single quilt, the very middle point is the most important. So just do what you feel comfortable with and make sure it works for you. As you're stitching along, remember that if your seam is pressed open, and one of your seams is on the bottom, make sure that you just make sure that it stays open. It just makes your life that little bit easier when you're not having to unpick sections. And there's no rush. Take your time. You can stop halfway and double check you're going to hit your point as you go. If, like me, you've just done it and you realize that you're going to be a little bit off, then just accept that that is it. There are more important issues in this world than making sure that your points fit. And if they work, fabulous. And if they don't beat yourself up about it. I'm not far off, that's for sure. Oh, I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Right, I'm going to press the seam open first. And this one I'll do this. Oh, you can see it. I will be using the nose of my iron to help me do this. Just because there are so many pieces of fabric joining in. Just take your time. Oh my goodness, I hit every point I was supposed to. That never happens. And we are... Oh, poop, I missed one seam. Okay. One seam got twisted. But the front looks fabulous. Voila! I think that's a really gorgeous little collection of fabrics there. Really, really loved it. Loved making it. The border is not that hard. We're putting on, I think we said 2.5 inches for the border. because this is currently coming in at, this is 14 inches finished. Hang on a second. Yep, 14 inches finished. Thank you, Amanda. I love it. I think it's really pretty. So what we've also got is we've got 3 other colorways as well, which is a blue colorway. The blue is beyond divine. And then we've got a dark green colorway as well, which is just a little bit breathtaking. What I'm going to do on the other piece as well, I'm going to switch some colors around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bumbleberry as the pink, and I'm going to put the pink as the bumbleberry. And on the bigger one, this is for the bigger one, I'm going to put this as the purple and the purple then as this. So that's going to be my big version of it. So it just gives you a bit of an idea to how you can play with the fabrics and see what works for you. You may prefer it this way, you may prefer it another way. It just gives you options. But the kit that comes with it will give you more than enough fabric to make the mini and the maxi. I would say make the maxi first, because then your leftover offcut pieces you can then use for your mini. And that is me. I'm just going to check if there are any more live messages. Thank you all so much for being here. Hello, Anne Davies. Yes, I think I've covered everything there. It was lovely to have you all. I'm going to put a 2.5 inch border on each side. Maybe 3, 2.5, 3. It's going to be a cushion, so I'll probably actually make it into a 3.5 inch border all the way around, and that will then in turn have a cushion on the back to make a cushion for the top. So thank you all so much for being here. 160 minutes. What's that? 2 hours 20. Lovely. No, yes, 2 hours 20. Lovely to have your company for the evening. Look after yourself, stay safe, and I will see you on Natasha Makes on the 29th. I'll probably be doing another demo before now and then. Who knows when? We shall see. Look after you. Bye-bye. Thanks, Denise. That's very kind. Bye-bye.